This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. On this special edition of NC Spin, we welcome back Governor Pat McCrory for one of his periodic visits with us to discuss issues of interest to our state. Governor, it's always good to be with you. Welcome back.
Thanks, Tom.
We've got a lot of ground we want to cover in this interview, so I want to get started by discussing a project that's near and dear to your heart, Connect NC. A lot of us remember that one of your campaign promises in 2012 was that you were going to propose a transportation infrastructure improvement program, a 25-year plan, you said, something that every governor going back to Jim Martin has talked about. But you promised it, and you're delivering on it. Connect NC. I know you could spend the rest of the show talking about it, but if you will, give us sort of a condensed version.
Well, we made three promises. The first was to change the formula on how we distribute road money, to take the politics out of it, and we did that. The second was to develop a 25-year transportation plan, which we've done that. And now we want to speed up the construction of that 25-year transportation infrastructure plan. And that's why we're recommending bonds at a point in time when our interest rates are the lowest we'll ever see them in our lifetime. And now is the time to do borrowing of money, like a mortgage account, not like a credit card, but a mortgage account, and invest in road projects and infrastructure projects, because if we don't do this, literally we have some major road projects that will be delayed for over a decade. And, you know, we're the 9th largest state now by population, North Carolina is. We just passed Michigan. And think how much we're going to grow in the next 10 to 20 years. We'll probably be down to number 7 and pass Ohio and Georgia. We can either prepare for that growth now or react to that growth.
Well, I like what you had to say about a guy with a leaky roof. If you let it keep leaking, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more to finally fix it.
I think it's a conservative thing to do, because the more you delay building these projects, the more expensive they're going to get, and we continue to have congestion. We have parks that are in ill repair. We have our 2 ports in Wilmington and Morehead City that we hope more ships will come in and trade, but if we don't fix these
super container ships can't come in.
We're in the 20th century in our ports right now. We need major infrastructure improvement. And our universities and community colleges have 1960s buildings, science labs, 20th century science labs in the 21st century. It's an embarrassment. We need to upgrade our facilities and military facilities. As commander of the Guard, National Guard, we have major infrastructure issues. And and it's just been. We have not had a bond referendum in 15 years, and that was all universities.
So there are 2 parts to your plan here. One of them is transportation, highways.
One of them's
the other one's infrastructure.
That's correct.
All right, let's take them one at a time. Part 1, the transportation, right. $1.37 billion.
That's right.
27 highway projects, 176 paving projects. How were these selected, by the way?
Based upon the priority order of the mobility formula, in addition to those projects that are permit ready, because we'd want them done as quickly as possible while interest rates are low. So no politics whatsoever. It was based upon the current list that we're building now in our next 10-year plan, and then speeding up the ones below that list and moving on. Highway 74 in Winston-Salem, the 74 bypass in Shelby, the connection between Elizabeth City and Hampton Roads.
Yeah.
I mean, these are major connections between North Carolina cities and towns, and connections between North Carolina and our adjoining states.
And you're saying that they're going to create 12,000 short-term jobs, 4,000 long-term jobs? How's that going to work?
Well, it's through new construction. It's major construction projects. And most of these will be North Carolina companies, hopefully building these new roads and infrastructure. And listen, we either wait and do nothing.
Which is what we've been doing.
And then we react to the growth. And, you know, once you add lane capacity, it's too late.
Yeah.
And I believe in I believe in the concept. I had a mentor by the name of Bill Lee in Charlotte.
Duke
Power, and he was a wonderful engineer. And he said you can either wait until the pain arrives and do it then, but most likely you've waited too long, but it's an easy sell, or you can anticipate the pain and do it now, and what you'll do will work, but it's a heck of a sale.
All right, so is the idea that each of these projects would be on a ballot separately?
No, it'd be we'd have the transportation ballot, and we'd list all the projects that would be completed with that transportation project. So total transparency, where the voters would know what they're voting on. But it'd be a transportation bond, and then we'd have an infrastructure bond. And
so I could conceivably vote for one and not the other?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure bond would be for the universities, or community colleges, or parks, or ports, intermodal facilities, and military.
And you're saying there will be no tax increase?
No tax increase.
How's that going to work?
Well, in fact, if anything, we'll be paying less debt in the next, I think after 5 or 6 years, than we are now, because we're paying off existing bonds that will be paid off in the next 5 to 7 years. We'll actually have less debt in the next 10 years than we would doing these bonds.
Well, I was going to say, you know, a lot of people are saying $2.8 billion, that's way too much money to spend. They forget that in 2001, we passed a $3.1 billion.
It's actually a very small bond. Some would say, in fact, if anything, the critics would say you need to go larger. But, you know, I've got some critics who don't want to borrow money, and I disagree. I don't agree in borrowing money for unemployment insurance, because that's credit card borrowing. I do believe, as a mayor and as a governor, that you borrow money for large capital projects.
Well, explain to me. There seems to be some real pushback about this over in the legislature. I mean,
not just the legislature. I've even got some members of the North Carolina Chamber leadership who aren't endorsing this, while chambers across the nation.
What's the problem with saying, okay, I may not agree with you, but let's give the people the chance to say
You're going to have to ask them, but we're going to sell it, and we're getting chamber support from throughout the state. We're getting county commission and city council support throughout the state. We're getting trade associations throughout the state. But inside the Beltline here in Raleigh, they seem to talk to the same 100 people. And there's a hesitance to take action. Now, to the credit of the legislature, they've got a lot on their plate.
They do.
And they haven't had a lot of time to deal with this issue. And I need to give them time, but there's a sense of urgency.
Well, we've been talking about this for 20 years.
Well, I've been talking about it for 3 months, and I think we need to focus on the big issues that are important to most of the people in North Carolina.
I will have to tell you that I've been watching governors since 1960. You're working harder on this. I mean, you are really out there beating the bushes selling this. What's the reaction to the rank and file?
Outside the Beltline, we haven't had any negative criticism. Inside the Beltline is where my toughest sale is. And I think the legislators and other leaders of this state need to get out and hear what the people have to say. The people want us to prepare for the next generation. The good news is...
And they're tired of the potholes.
They're tired of the potholes, and they're tired of not having lane capacity, and they're tired of the bridges not being built over the creeks that should be 4 lanes now instead of 2 lanes. And, you know, our roads in North Carolina, they go from 8 lanes to 2 lanes to 8 lanes to 4 lanes. No rhyme and reason. And wherever it's widest, by the way, it was named after a previous politician.
Exactly.
Which meant we probably shouldn't have done it there.
Well, I sound like I'm your campaign manager on this, but the truth of the matter is, you remember when you were Pat McCrory, the mayor of Charlotte, and you'd come on NC Spin.
Yeah.
We were talking about this then, and we said we needed to have a bond program.
In 1995, when I was elected mayor, I did a 25-year transportation plan in Charlotte, and they're in the 20th year of the plan. And you know how we use this? We use it to recruit new businesses for North Carolina. Because when a new business is considering North Carolina, one of my selling points, as I did with Charlotte, was to say, look at the investment we're making along with your investment. They're going to complement each other. And it's a fantastic selling point to tell businesses that you're preparing for the future, because they're coming from other areas where there's a lot of pain and congestion.
So if we don't get this on the ballot in 2015, which is what you originally proposed, November. And there's been some suggestion maybe it get moved over to March of next year.
Right.
If this doesn't go in November or March, what are the chances that it will be on a ballot come re-election time? Because the lawmakers are going to have to...
You got election season, you got the presidential election, you got the gubernatorial election. But the biggest danger is you got rising interest rates. Even today, as we record this, we get word that the interest rates are going up. Every interest rates point is millions upon millions of dollars.
Well, if you like NC Spin and you want more, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com or NC Spin on Facebook. We've got exclusive video footage you can't get anywhere else. Plus, you can read perspectives from opinion leaders across our state. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com or NC Spin on Facebook. And after these messages, we're going to ask the governor to talk about the budget.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
98% of farms are family farms. Families that believe in values like hard work, faith, and integrity. Farmers care for their crops, land, and animals because it's their passion and it's the right thing to do. They take pride in raising healthy, affordable food for your family and their own. Their livelihood depends on it. At Farm Bureau, we believe in farmers, their values, and their way of life.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
We now return to NC Spin.
Welcome back to our special visit with Governor Pat McCrory. Governor, you proposed a budget to the legislature in March. The House passed their budget recommendations in early May, and the Senate voted on theirs this week. If you will, compare the budget approaches from the two houses and tell us with which you are more comfortable.
Sure. Well, first of all, when I did my budget, there was a $300 million deficit.
Right.
Since then, the House and Senate have done their budgets with the good news of a $400 million surplus, and I anticipate that may be rising somewhat.
Good.
And that's good news for North Carolina, and I think that shows our policies are working. But there's a difference. First of all, the House and Senate budget are totally different from each other.
Very.
Very, very different. Same party, different budget, but you know, that's why we have two chambers. And my disagreement and agreements, some of the agreements that I have with the Senate, I agree with them on the reserves. We need to put more money in the reserves. We only have 3% of the reserves. The Senate now puts 6% in rainy day fund, which we need to prepare for the tough times because it's not if it'll come, it'll come. We like some of the education proposals in the Senate, don't like others regarding, we like the teacher pay, one which makes our commitment to teacher pay. On the House side, we like the economic development package that we've been waiting 5 months for, which is very, very good, and we need to get that passed. No cap, still can recruit headquarters. The Senate one causes some heartache, a lot of policy in the Senate budget. And we used to criticize the Democrats' legislature back in the old days when I was a mayor for putting policy in the budget, and we shouldn't be doing that. And we did a lot of policy, and plus the sales tax redistribution is something I strongly disagree with.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that sales tax situation. The Senate wants to cut, again, personal income taxes and corporate income taxes. Personal just 0.25%, corporate more. But raise sales taxes on things like veterinarian services and automobile repairs and, God forbid, advertising and some things like that.
You have a conflict of interest there.
But they leave alone things like lawyers' services and doctors. I mean, if we're going to tax services, shouldn't we tax all of them?
Well, first of all, you're talking about a continuation of the tax reform.
Yes.
And the ink is barely dry from the tax reform that Tom Tillis-Phil and I agreed to under a lot of negotiations. Common sense tax reform, which has worked. And I think we ought to let that play out for a while to see how long it works for the next 3 or 4 years.
And you don't like Harry Brown's redistribution of the formula?
Totally disagree with that.
Tell me why.
It'll be a tax on literally millions of people in North Carolina, a hidden tax that'll be transferred to county or city government because of the revenues. And it doesn't hit just the major economic centers, including Durham, Raleigh, Greensboro, and Charlotte. It's going to hit the beach communities and the mountain communities extremely hard. And this isn't our tax. This is the one lesson Republicans and Democrats, for some reason, we get into the Beltline in Raleigh and we think everything belongs to us. This is a local sales tax, not a state sales tax. And now we want to transfer it from one locality to another locality. And to me, it's their tax. And they ought to be able to keep what they collect and spend it as they wish. And the travel and tourism areas at the beach have to put a lot of extra money to deal with that heavy traffic coming to our beach communities.
A Pew study recently said that a lot of these states, like Illinois, that have cut taxes sharply,
right,
whether they're Republican-controlled or Democrat-controlled, are now encountering real big budget deficits.
We are not, because I made a compromise in which we put some pragmatic tax proposals in with triggers. So I did not do what Kansas did, and I did not do what other states did. We needed to lower our corporate income tax and our income tax because we had the highest in the Southeast. And South Carolina, my good friend Nikki Haley there, was kicking our tail because we were not. You could move right across the border and save 2%. And 2% for a manufacturing company is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we've lowered our corporate tax rate, we lowered our income tax rate, and now we're competitive. In fact, we're lower than South Carolina. But let's let that work out for a while before coming up with new tax proposals. And it's working. I mean, we've got a surplus. By the way, we also increased your movie ticket to replace those and a few other tickets. But, you know, I think people will still go see Jurassic Park and make it.
The box office says
I think it's doing pretty good.
All right, the economy, Medicaid, and the elections. That's what we're going to talk about after these messages.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Where do you go when you need to know? ANC makes it easy for you to get the information you need to make well-informed public policy decisions. Our members are industry leaders who are ready to share their industry-specific insights with you. Want to hear both sides of the story? ANC members can tell you. Just use the ANC member directory as your guide or call us directly. ANC members have the knowledge, expertise, and perspective you need to create public policies that are good for North Carolina. We are ready for your call.
It's a fact. Patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at OurNCHealthcare.com.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
Does your North Carolina business or organization have a story to tell? I'm Richard Campbell, and at Carolina Broadcasting and Publishing, we help tell stories that connect you to the people who will respond. We take the time to understand our clients' needs and what makes them unique. We craft their stories through the efficient use of words, images, and videos that resonate with their desired audience. We also know that a good story is incomplete without a call to action. On video, on air, online, and in print, from concept to final production, no one can help tell your story more effectively or affordably than we can. For special introductory offers, visit carolinabroadcasting.com or call 919-832-1416. Again, that's carolinabroadcasting.com. Let us help tell your story today.
We now return to NC Spin.
We continue our special interview with Governor Pat McCrory. Governor, you've talked a lot about the Carolina comeback. We just found out that the economy did not grow in 2014 as fast as we thought it had. Mike Walden, economist at NC State, says part of it's because of the surging dollar vis-a-vis other currencies. What's your take on where the economy in North Carolina is right now?
Well, compared to where we were 2 years ago, we were the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country. I mean, North Carolina was in terrible shape 2 years ago. Plus, we had a $2.8 billion deficit to the federal government for unemployment. We've paid that off about 2 months ago. $2.6 to $2.8 billion, we paid it off. Our unemployment rate now is not in the bottom 20, we're in the top 20. But we still have many challenges. We have challenges throughout the state, especially manufacturing is growing, but it's not growing at the rate we'd hope it to be. We're getting some good return in finance, but it's still a struggle. And I do think there's some things just totally out of our control, like the dollar impacts a lot of the trade.
But you talk about incentives and needing incentives, particularly the JDIG money and so forth like that.
job development grant money.
Yeah. Do you know of specific instances where we were in the running to get a plant relocation and lost it because of incentive monies?
I know we've lost plants, and it's been a combination of factors, and one of them is JDIC. It's always hard to tell what exactly, but I know what is happening. South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida are offering tax rebates, and that's basically what they are, is tax rebates. It's not money up front. And North Carolina right now has been without a plan for 5 months. And
well, we've lost
two
two automobile factories.
Now, those were, and one of the reasons may have been the incentives offered by South Carolina, plus they've got a good port. And I'm trying to deal with both issues. I'm trying to get an economic package that gives tax reimbursements to companies that invest in North Carolina, after they pay their taxes, by the way, and create jobs. And second, we need to upgrade our ports, because right now the Charleston port is and the Savannah port is a major advantage for those two states.
Let's talk about Medicaid reform. It held up a budget agreement last year, which is why it was August before we got a budget finally agreed upon. And they essentially punted the ball down the road. Are we going to get Medicaid reform this year?
The good news is both the Senate and House leaders said they're not leaving until we get Medicaid reform.
I told somebody the other day on the radio, be able to get you trick-or-treat.
I don't know if that's good news for me or not, because I with all due respect, we need to get them back home closer to the constituents.
But the Senate wants to get Medicaid out of the Department of Health and Human Services.
That's not going to happen. I think from
Would you veto a bill if it had?
I don't think it passes constitutional muster, and I don't think it's going to happen. We need accountable representation, and the formation of an authority in which we pay several people $140,000 a year to sit on a part-time board, by the way, more than my secretaries make, about as much as the governor makes, is ridiculous. We need accountable people to run Medicaid, and also Medicaid integrates with food stamps, integrates with all these other programs at the federal and state level, and to separate them now would cause inefficient and a bureaucratic government.
I got to ask you, recently you vetoed two bills. The legislature came back and overrode your vetoes. Now, we understood when Beth Perdue did this, she had a Republican legislature. This is your own party. A lot of people say this makes you look weak and ineffective. How do you respond to that?
I could care less. I'm going to do what I think is right. And I think most of the people agree with my my vetoes. But I always said when I come here, I was going to step on the toes of the status quo here in Raleigh, and I'm doing just that. Even when I lose, I send a message and let the people of North Carolina know what's going on.
Quick question. 2016 election year, we're going to move the presidential primary to March, but we're still going to have the regular primaries in May. It's about $6 million per statewide election. Why are we having two primaries?
I think it's so North Carolina can be in play for the presidential election, because we never were in play. Most elections were over by May, the presidential election, and this allows it to come in play. And if you had the other primaries in March, it's really early for the council state positions and the county and city elections also.
Comment very quickly after these messages on, I want to talk about court cases. We'll be back in a moment.
Be glad to.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
1 in 5 North Carolinians can't buy healthy foods in their communities, increasing their risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and some forms of cancer. It's time to invest in the Healthy Corner Store initiative. Visit ncallianceforhealth.org to learn more.
Hi, I'm Linda Loveland. I want the best for my kids. Feeding them foods they like within my budget is a priority. But what do we really know about these foods? North Carolina farmers and food experts give you a website to find it all. FeedTheDialogueNC.com, a place where moms like you and me can learn more about the foods we eat and the farmers that feed us. Check it out, add your input, and help feed the dialogue. Let's talk food at FeedTheDialogueNC.com.
Every year, North Carolina patients undergo 635,000 same-day surgeries. 72% of these surgeries are performed in our highest-cost hospital facilities, adding as much as $2,000 to every procedure. The state's outdated Certificate of Need law prevents competition from lower-cost, higher-quality same-day surgery centers, inflating healthcare costs and limiting patient choice. Tell state lawmakers it's time to lower health care costs now. It's time to make a simple fix to an outdated law, increasing patient choice and lowering health care costs now. You can help. Visit reformconnow.com and tell lawmakers it's time for a simple fix to an outdated law. It's time to lower health care costs now.
We now return to NC Spin.
Continue our visit with Governor Pat McCrory. Governor, a lot of court cases. I want to hit several of them very quickly. The Supreme Court is going to rule the end of this month whether or not states can offer subsidies for health care insurance under the Affordable Care Act. Let's say the Supreme Court comes back and says, you can't do that. What's North Carolina going to do?
There is no B plan for North Carolina. There is no B plan for all states that are on the federal exchange.
30-some states.
30-some states, and we're the third largest. We have over 500,000 people currently on the Obamacare. And I went to the White House, specifically spoke to the president, and I said, can we work together on the B plan? And he basically brushed off and went, the Supreme Court's not going to rule against us. That was good for him. He apparently knows information we don't have. But it's going to be a heck of a wake-up call for everyone, and the federal government and the White House better start talking about it.
There's several other ones. We've got this separation of power lawsuit that you have filed against
Jim Martin, Governor Martin, Governor Hunt, and myself. I firmly
give us the skinny on that. How do you think that's going to come out?
Well, the three-judge panel, which was approved by the Senate and others, ruled unanimously in the favor of myself and Jim Martin and Jim Hunt. And it's a separation of powers issue, basically saying that the legislature can't run the day-to-day operations and execute the laws, which is our Constitution. The legislature makes laws. The executive branch implements those laws. It can't be the other way around. And what's ironic is I've joined the governor of Texas in suing Obama on him making immigration law as opposed to implementing immigration law. So I'm bipartisan in my lawsuits. And, Jim Martin went through this. He had a lawsuit very similar and won. So did Jim Hunt. So they agreed to join me in this effort. And we need to have that. We need to have that debate regarding the crossing of lines. The Constitution was written. We have three branches of government, and we need to respect those three branches.
A lot of other court cases: voter ID, redistricting,
the
school
voter
vouchers.
ID. I'm pretty confident we're going to get voter ID, and that's of course where we have disagreement with the Attorney General and others and the other party. But I feel our voter ID is very common sense, and I think over 80% of the public supports common sense voter ID to vote.
Governor, our visits are always too short. We got to get you back here more
great.
often.
You know your stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a pleasure talking to you, and we thank you again for visiting with us on NC Spin. We look forward to our next visit either after the legislature leaves or perhaps maybe...
I'll have gray hair at that point in time.
Well, or maybe later part of the year. We hope you'll go to our website, ncspin.com, to see a replay of this interview or get perspectives from thought leaders in our state. Next week, we return to our regular format and catch you up to date on the latest budget happenings and other balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.